gentlemen, due to COVID restrictions, we do have to cut this panel at 8:30, so that way they can come in sanitized. So I want to thank Joe Bob for being here this evening. Joe Bob, the way I'd like to start out this evening is giving you the opportunity to plug any upcoming things that you've got going on, or to talk about anything that you've got coming up, or any special interests you've got going on right now.
Well, the main thing is that season 3 of The Last Drive-In starts on April 16th. And, you know, they don't let me announce the movies or the titles in advance. But we have, or guests, but we have some great guests despite the COVID restrictions. And we have some, in the season, we have at least 3 movies that Darcy despises. And so it's a really good season. And then in July, we have the first Joe Bob's Drive-In Jamboree, which is we're calling it the Drive-In Woodstock, or the Gathering of the Mutants at the Mahoning Drive-In in Lehighton, Pennsylvania. And so the first night of the festival is an indie film festival for guerrilla filmmakers, for guys who are cut off from New York and LA. Really low budget. It's to honor the guys who put up their own money and get out there and make their own films. So that's the first day. The second day is going to be a live version of what we do on Shudder, on stage, with 2 double feature, and we're filming it. And then the third night is Joe Bob's Haunted Drive-In, which is a haunt at the drive-in. And then throughout the weekend there are bands, sideshows, all this other kind of stuff. So it's the first big live event that we've done. So that's July 16th through 18th. That's it. I'm going out again with I have another thing to plug. I'm going out again with my live show, How Rednecks Saved Hollywood. But a lot of the theaters are 50% capacity, or some of them are 25% capacity. So I need really big theaters. You know, I was doing it in theaters that were 300 seats. You know, now I need 1,500 seat theaters to get the same number of people in. So anyway, so it's a little bit of a challenge, but I'm still doing the live show.
Excellent. So can we talk about Monster Vision?
Yeah.
So how did you get started with Monster Vision, and was that something that was, were you involved directly in the development of that, or was that something that they laid out?
Well, no, I was doing a show on the movie channel, which I don't know, how many of you ever had the movie channel in this room? Oh wow, that's the most people. I didn't know that many people ever had the movie channel. They're all in this room. Everybody who ever subscribed to the movie channel is in this room tonight. Amazing. So so I was on the movie channel for 11 years with a show called Joe Bob's Drive-In Theater, which was a double feature every Saturday night, 52 weeks a year. And so they changed format at the movie channel, and they got rid of all their hosts. And so I was off the air for I think 4 months. And during the time I was off the air, the programmers at TNT called and said, "Hey, you want to do another show?" I was like, well, "Okay, sure. What kind of show you want to do?" The exact same show. And I said, "Well, okay, good, because I still have the sets. They're still here, you know, and I still have the wardrobe, you know, everything." And so, you know, good timing. And so we kind of just moved the show from the movie channel over to TNT. Now, the Monster Vision had existed before with a series of different hosts, different guest hosts that they had. The most intriguing of which were Penn and Teller. Penn and Teller did some very interesting Monster Vision shows before I got there. And then, but it was the first time I was on a commercial station, or commercial network. And so they said, well, you know, we have 7, you know, anywhere from 5 to 7 breaks in each movie. How many times do you want to be on at the breaks? And I said, all of them. And I didn't realize how much work that was. So I appeared at every break of every movie that we showed, and I was on 52 weeks a year on Monster Vision. So it wasn't anything that was ever planned. It just, all the format just sort of, see, we didn't have any time limits. You know, most TV shows you have time limits. We just had to be off by 6 a.m. And so all you had to do was, so you could talk as long as I could talk as long as I wanted to talk. And as long as we were off the air by 6 a.m., it was fine. We could finish at 4, we could finish at 5:30. They didn't care. You know, they would fill in with whatever was left over. And so, so the format just naturally evolved from us just saying, hey, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And then when I went to Shudder, when finally, you know, Shudder wants to do a show, well, what kind of show you want to do? The exact same show. You know, Monster Vision, the show's 20 years old, you know, and they were like, yeah, we want to do that show. And I was like, you can't repeat TV. You can't do 20-year-old TV. It doesn't work. It is a maxim of TV that you do not repeat. And so I thought it was going to be a one-off deal, you know. And no, sure enough, people showed up saying, oh, yeah, that was great. We want that format. I said, do you realize this is the 3rd time we've done the exact same show? yeah, we realize that. You know, do it again. So I've really just done one show in three different times.
Well, the old saying is, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah, although at the end of my tenure, you may remember this, at Monster Vision, they wanted to make the show more female-friendly. Because if you looked at the statistics on my show, it was like 65% male or 70% male, and that's really bad in TV. They want females. They don't really want, you know, especially, I mean, in sports they want males, in sports channels, but, you know, in most channels they want the females. And so I had these really bad numbers as far as more males than females. And so they were trying to make it more female friendly. So I ended up like the last year hosting stuff like Look Who's Talking To. And, you know, they kept giving me these movies that I had no affinity for, you know, that I had to like come up with some way to talk about.
So how did your partnership with Darcy go about in Last Drive?
I needed a male girl because I've always had a male girl. Darcy's the 5th male girl in history. And we were going to do the marathon in 2018 and needed a male girl, and she had come to an autograph signing and said she was a horror blogger, and, you know, a male girl has to be good looking and talk about horror. And so I said, hey, you want to be the male girl? And so she said, yeah, I want to be the male girl. And then I thought she was going to quit on the very first, as soon as we started to roll the cameras, you know, because she wasn't sure she wanted to be the male girl, but then she decided she did want to be the male girl. And she was very encouraging. She was very encouraging to me about doing the show again for a 3rd time, you know, doing it again. It's like, I just didn't think it was going to work, and she did think it was going to work. And so she was encouraging in that way. So, so then after we did the marathon in the summer of 2018, I was like, okay, you're the male girl. And, you know, for whatever we do in the future. And she was like, are you sure you want me to be the male girl? I said, yeah, be the male girl. And so that's the whole story. I mean, that's how it developed.
Excellent. So, of all the movies that you've reviewed or watched, whatever, what is the favorite show that you've done?
Oh, favorite show I've done of all time? Of all the shows? I mean, we're talking about 20,000 hours of TV. I go with what the fans like. You know, those sort of become my favorite shows. I did a Friday the 13th marathon. That's most frequently cited, Dusk to Dawn marathon. It's most frequently cited by fans as their favorite show. I did a presentation of the Warriors, where I showed the actual subway route that they took using the New York City subway maps, and people always remember that one. And but I don't know. I mean, I guess the two favorite guests that I ever had. Roger Corman was on both of my previous shows. He was on the Movie Channel, and he was on TNT, and I love Roger Corman. It's just like, if there's one guy in the world that can intimidate me, it's Roger Corman. You know, it's like, meet the Pope, no big deal. Me, Roger Corman, it's like, I just really eat up everything that man says. Lance Henderson, I thought was a great interview, because he was so straightforward and honest, and he, at the time, he rarely did interviews, and so that was a very memorable one. Robert Forster, another tough guy, character actor, another favorite interview of mine. There were interviews that I hated that the fans liked, you know, because the interviewee would take over the show. And that was Gary Busey, and he was just a wild, uncontrollable animal. And Sally Kirkland, it's just everything she said just went so far over my head that I just became totally lost. And then later everyone said, "Oh, we love that thing you did with Sally Kirkland." I was like, "Well, what was she talking about? I don't know." In fact, there was a point at which I thought she said she had sex with Muammar Gaddafi. I thought that's what she had said. It said that she had sex with Muammar Gaddafi because she was talking about world peace and how things like that help world peace. And so now I'm thinking, now she's on to like 4 more subjects, and I'm thinking, how can I get back to the Muammar Gaddafi sex? and I never did quite get back to it, you know, but I sort of tried to do it, and it was. And then I asked her later, "Did you really have sex with Muammar Gaddafi?" "Yes, I was doing it for a good cause."
So, are there any movies that, is there a particular movie that you haven't done yet that you really like to do?
A movie that I haven't done that I would really like to do, you know, oddly enough, I've never done some of the classics. I mean, I've never done the original Night of the Living Dead. Partly because it's in public domain, and movies in public domain. That's why it shows up on every cable access horror host show, because it's free. But at a place like Shudder, they don't want something that's free, because that means you can get sued later by somebody claiming that it's theirs, you know. And so at the places I've worked, they don't want a public domain movie because it's a legal quagmire, you know. And so the ones that are in public domain, I tend not to have done those, you know. And a lot of those are classics. I haven't done any of the. I'm always trying to get my bosses to do movies from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And they never want to do that. And they especially never want to show black and white. And so, I mean, all the time I was at the Movie Channel, Turner Entertainment didn't just have a lot of access to movies. They owned hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of movies. They owned them. Ted Turner bought them in the 80s. And so one of them that they owned was Todd Browning's Freaks. And so every year we put it on the list. You know, I want to show Todd Browning's Freaks. In fact, let's show all the Todd Browning movies. Black and white, it's in the 30s, people will surf out, we can't do that, And so we were never able to do Todd Browning's Freaks, even though we owned it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't there some laws, like old bylaws, where there are certain parts of the country that movie still cannot legally be shown?
I don't know if that's true or not. I know that freak shows were outlawed in a lot of places. The live freak shows, it used to be the lifeblood of Carnival Midways, I did an article years ago on one of the last 10-in-1 shows. The Carnies call them 10-in-1 shows because they're in a tent and you have 10 acts and you pay one price for the 10 acts. It takes about an hour to run through the 10 freak show acts, and then you have two times in the hour where they say for an additional 50 cents or something, you can go into this adjoining tent and you can see something that they've ballyhooed inside the 10-in-1. I'm explaining way too much about freak shows. But anyway, I did this article on the last big traveling one that had some of the most famous freak entertainers in the world. And what was sad about it was they knew that these laws were being passed and that their livelihoods were going to be destroyed. And it was they were bitter about it, the actual performers. But that's been years ago, and it's only gotten more stringent. Plus, you don't have freak shows anymore because medical science advanced so well that a lot of these things were birth defects, and they're fixed at the time that the baby is born. Which is a good thing.
All right, guys, so let's take it out to the audience. Is there anybody in here that's got a question for Joe Bob? How about right over here?
Hi. I couldn't think of a great one on my own, so I outsourced one to the Last Drive-In fan book on Facebook, the fan group, and this is the favorite one I had. And they said, what is, in your opinion, the first thing you think of if you were thinking of a movie from the 80s that encapsulated everything that was good about 80s horror into one film? What's the first one that comes to your mind?
A film from the 80s that encapsulates everything that's good about the 80s?
About 80s horror and everything in there into one 80s film.
And so you're not asking me about the best 80s horror film. You're asking me what's the most 80s horror film.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, the one that captures the flavor the most.
Well, I would have to say it would be something, I don't know if I could name just one, but it would have to be something goofy. So, because the 80s had a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor, so maybe They Live. I mean, would They Live count as a
Absolutely.
Because it's tongue-in-cheek, and it has the horror. It also has action elements. It has sort of like it has like 6 or 7 different. Big Trouble in Little China. Would that sort of encapsulate the 80s? A movie that just has everything, where they just threw everything into the pot. Where you can't define the genre exactly.
Well, on top of that, They Live has probably the best fight scene in movie history.
Yes.
The which one?
The one between Keith David and Roddy Piper.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. That fight scene goes on for, I think, 11 minutes. I'm not remembering, but it's like, yeah, it's one of those. You had to go back to the really big budget westerns to find fights that went on that long, and there weren't a lot of stunt coordinators that had worked on those old westerns, and so that was a great piece of filmmaking.
All right. How about right here?
Thank you. Personally, I would say Return of the Living Dead was the classic.
Return of the Living Dead is a good example because it has the gore and it has the sex and it has it has the real horror. The thing I love about Return of the Living Dead is that quirky ensemble acting style that they had. somehow they just nailed this world that you wanted to be part of because of the way that they talked and the way the dialogue was written. It made you wish they'd done that with more films.
My real question was on the show. Did it take you and Darcy a really long time to develop the rapport you have? Because
Did it take Darcy and I a long time to develop a rapport?
yeah, I mean, it looks like so smooth and that it seems so natural.
Well, I mean, it's
At least on TV it is.
well, I mean, it's true. I mean, it's like things that don't strike me as usually when people talk about our rapport, they're talking about the things we disagree on, and the way we disagree about it. And things that don't strike me as controversial at all sometimes strike her as controversial. And so when that happens, I kind of like, I want to go into that. I want to talk more about that and see why that's true. So she hammers me a lot for things about, that she thinks are out of date.
All right, next question. Let's go for Ray.
Any chance we get Halloween 3?
Any chance we'll get Halloween 3?
Why not?
There is a chance. There's a strange thing that's happened with the Halloween movies and the Friday the 13th movies and Nightmare on Elm Street movies and any other franchise you can name like that, which is that when I first wrote my book, my first horror book, and I wanted to use a picture from Friday the 13th Part 5 in the book, I would just call up Paramount and say, I'm going to use this picture of Friday the 13th Part 5. I've already got it. You send it to me in the press kit. And they would go, sure. And then by the time my third book came out, I would say, I want to use this picture from, Halloween 9, the one nobody watched. And I said, that'll be $1,500, sir. And this thing changed where suddenly the studios that had these franchises suddenly decided their movies were worth huge amounts of money, and they streaming because of the way streaming works, they would decide sometimes we'll license these movies. We'll just license them 1 month at a time, 2 months at a time. Well, we don't want to show a movie that is only going to be up for 2 months or 3 months or whatever. We try to get a movie that's, we're going to have it for 2 years or 3 years or something. Well, somehow Halloween 3 fell into this. Don't get me wrong, I'm not anxious to show Halloween 3, but it got into this never land of it's available, but it's only available for these 2 months, and then you got to give it back, and then maybe a year from then you can get it for another 2 months or whatever. And so part of the art form of programming today in the streaming world is to decide well in advance what you want, and then nail it down and say we want it on this date, and we want to have it till this date, and force them to give you a deal on the movie. So I think that's what's happening with Halloween 3.
We'll take a couple months.
What's that?
We will take a couple months.
Well, you'll take a couple months? Okay. Well, there may be something coming up with that. Maybe something this summer. So we'll see.
All right, we have one more question right back here. Did you still have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What movie scared you the most when you were a kid?
What movie scared me the most when I was a kid? Boy. Anything that had Betty Davis in it. That period of her career at the very end of her life when she would just play these witchy women. And there was something about Betty Davis that always just scared the crap out of me. So I think maybe Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, or one of those movies is the very first horror film that I ever saw in the theater. When I was a kid. you know, if you went to Saturday afternoon horror day at the theater as a kid, usually it was horror comedy. It was the Three Stooges or you know, Abbott and Costello horror. You know, it was never, or you know, The Tingler or something like that. It was fun, you know. So I don't know. We weren't that scared of it.
All right, looks like we've got time for one more. Do I have one right over here? All right, how about right here? Oh, in the bike shirt.
When's Darcy's next podcast episode coming out?
What?
When's Darcy's next podcast episode coming out?
When's Darcy's next podcast episode coming out?
Well, I think there was just one last week, right? And, you know, Darcy's here. What's the answer, Darcy? She didn't know.
She said that she's a cheerleader, not to ask her questions.
Oh, never do that. Darcy's not here.
I'm looking out for her. All right. You have a question also, sir?
Yeah. What's a horror movie or movies that everybody praises that's not Halloween 3 that you think is overrated or you despise?
A movie that everyone praises that I think is overrated. I'm not a big fan of the Rob Zombie movies, as everyone. Probably 90% of the people in this audience are huge Rob Zombie fans, right? It's like, and you know, the fact that they're derivative, you know, bothers me when I'm watching them. I'm thinking, oh, I saw that before. So I guess, but as a rule, I'm pretty much straight down the line with what the general public likes. I mean, generally, if it makes a lot of money, it's the same thing that I like. I don't have many weirdnesses. Well, one of them we showed on the marathon, Daughters of Darkness. I mean, that's not a popular movie with the horror crowd, but I personally like Daughters of Darkness, and so we showed it on the original marathon. But I'm trying to think if there's one that's really, really popular that I don't like, and I don't know. I can't think. I can't think of one. You know, I hate that movie every time it comes on. No, I don't have any like that.
All right, so let's flip that around here. Is there any particular movie, regardless of the genre, that if you're flipping through the channels and that movie's on, you immediately stop and watch it regardless?
I would say any Larry Cohen movie, and partly that's because even if you haven't seen the movie before, you know it's a Larry Cohen movie right away, just by the acting style, the photography, everything. So I'll always stop on a Larry Cohen movie and probably watch it all the way to the end. Is there anything else? I mean, some of these really well designed movies like Dale and versus Evil.
Oh, yeah.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Why couldn't I remember that? All right. Tucker and Dale versus Evil has such a perfect structure and such a perfect plot that I think I've watched it 3 times in the last year. You know, just because it's around. So yeah, and it has those moments, those iconic moments that you always remember.
All right, we got time for one last question. Anybody got one last question? All right, how about the very, very back?
How'd you get Lizzo?
I missed it. Say it again.
How'd you get
Oh,
Ernie?
Ernie? Ernie is the pet of our director, Austin Jennings. and so he was brought to the very first shoot of the very first marathon and became a part of the show.
Sounds like this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please do me a favor. Make sure you stop by Joe Bob's table, get some autographs, say hi to Darcy, and do me a favor, please put your hands together for a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.